Hi Harvest Kids, it's Pastor Annie. How are you this week? I know you guys have probably seen a lot of these lately if you've gone out shopping with your parents. One thing that I've found is I work at a grocery store and I deal with a lot of people, and when I'm talking to them, I have to really show my actions because they can't hear me and they can't read my lips through this mask a lot of times, and I can't hear them. And so a lot of us are using hand gestures and just showing that we're happy through our emotions. And that's a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about how Jesus visited the disciples. And you guys remember Peter? He was the one that said, Jesus, I will die for you. Even if everybody else leaves, I will never leave your side. You're my best friend. And then when it really came down to it, when Jesus, his best friend, was getting kicked and punched by his enemies, Peter actually cussed and was like, I don't even know that guy, and just turned his back on Jesus. And so he was feeling really sad about what he had done, and he felt so guilty. And Jesus had called each disciple one by one and said, you come, quit your profession, which was what they did for a living, and they would fish. And he would say, I want you to follow me. I'll make you fishers of men. So these men were feeling a little discouraged because Jesus was gone. And they decided to go back out to their normal job and go fishing. And so these are them. We have Peter right here. We have John and some of the other disciples, and they were on the boat. We'll just put them right there. And they went out, and the way that it was in the Middle East is it gets so hot during the day, and the fishies come out at night. And so they actually were just hanging out in one of their houses, you know, in the evening, and probably got done eating dinner with their wives and stuff, and they were all just hanging out. And Peter said, I'm gonna go fish. And they wanted to encourage their friend as well, and they said, we'll go with you. And so they all went, and they went fishing, and the sun had already gone down, and they would fish. Fishermen would fish all night. And so they fished, and they fished, and they fished. Can you just imagine the quietness of the night and hearing the water just lapping against the boat? And they got nothing, and they would talk to each other. You know, they have to be quiet so they don't scare the fish away. But they got nothing for like 9 hours, nothing. And before, when they had first met Jesus, he had done something that he's about to do in this story. And so what happened was they saw a man off in the distance, about 100 yards away, not too far away, but far enough where they couldn't really see his face. And they had seen Jesus brutalized. They saw his body torn up. They saw him die. And so they didn't think in their heads that this could be Jesus, even though this is the third time he's appeared to them after his death. And so they were thinking, there's a guy off there in the distance. And what the guy said is, friend, have you caught anything? And that would be common even for a stranger to say in the Middle East. That's how they communicate with each other. Like if there's someone coming from a long distance that they don't know, they'll invite them in for dinner because it's the desert, it's hot, and they like to be hospitable in that community, in that culture. And so he said, friend, and they still didn't know it was Jesus. He talked to them from a distance, and we'll put Jesus way out here. He was far enough away where, even though this isn't really showing it, it was 100 yards. And so he was far enough away where they could hear his voice across the water, but they couldn't quite make out who it was. And so he said, friend, have you caught anything? And they said, no. And so he told them, throw your nets over on the right side or the starboard side of the boat and you'll catch something. And right when they did that, it was so funny because this is them. And this is, we'll say this is Peter because he took off his coat and everything. And this is John. And right when that happened, they caught a bunch of big fish. And he recognized who it was at that point because Jesus has said it to them when he first met them. He said, put your nets on the other side. And they said, we've been doing this all day, you know, and they said, we'll do it for you. Right when that happened and the fish just came into their net, it was so heavy for them to lift it up into the boat. He said, he looked at Peter and he was thinking, are you thinking what I'm thinking? He said, it is the Lord. Right when he said it's the Lord, he's like, and he put on his jacket and dove into the water. And he swam to Jesus. And so the boat was so heavy with this net of fish that the rest of the disciples were actually dragging it and trying to get the boat back to shore because they wanted to see Jesus too. And so they were dragging the rest of the net was full of large fishes, and there was 153, which that's significant because there's 153 nations in the world. And that is a way to show that Jesus wants us to be fishers of men of every people group. But they finally get there, like Peter makes it to shore, and so he gets over here, and they finally make it to shore as well. Let me see if I have any of the others without Peter. And I'll put them like this, and we'll put Jesus like this. And when they got to shore, they saw a cozy fire. Like the sun had just come up. They were out all night fishing. And this was the first time they caught anything after like 8 hours. And so they get to the shore to see that it is Jesus, the one that they love so much. And he had built a fire and prepared bread and fish for them. They eat a lot of fish, and they actually find it to be really delicious, and they know how to cook it. And so maybe I should step over onto this side so you guys can see what's going on here. And so they had Jesus had built a fire and made breakfast for them, and they had been fishing all night. And so they were like, wow, the Lord, he made us some breakfast, you know? And so they didn't even ask, who are you? Because they were tempted to. Like, they saw him beat up so bad that they were just like, could this truly be him? Because he was just shining with the glory of God, and he looked so wonderful in his resurrected body. But it says in the Bible, they didn't even ask because they knew who it was by his actions. And then after that, we'll just say they're over here sitting among themselves eating the bread and the fish. And Jesus starts to talk to Peter. Peter was the one, even though he's here, we'll just pretend this is a different disciple, and we'll put them over here eating. And Jesus is talking, where's my other Jesus? Here he is. Jesus is talking to Peter. They had a little heart-to-heart, brother to brother. And he said, hey, friend, and he said, because Peter, the reason he went out to go fishing to begin with is because he was feeling really guilty. The last time he saw Jesus, he had said, I don't know him, and he turned his back, and he felt so bad that he had done that, especially since he said, I will always love you, and even if everyone else leaves, I never will. And he did exactly what he said he wouldn't do, and he used words a lot, but he showed with his actions that he wasn't strong and courageous enough. He turned his back on Jesus, and so Jesus, to show him how good he is and that he forgives him, he gave him a chance, because Peter said, I don't know the Lord 3 times, and then the rooster crowed in the morning, and then he's like, what Jesus said was true. Those words flooded back to his memory, and he ran away and felt so bad. So Jesus actually asks him 3 times. He says, Peter, do you love me more than these? And I'm assuming in this setting, he's talking about, you're fishing, these are your friends, this is your lifestyle. Do you love me more than these? More than these people and their opinions of you? More than your job, what you know how to do? Do you love me more than these? And Peter says, of course, Lord, yes, I love you. And so he says again, and just imagine them walking around the lake on the beach side, and them just walking together, and he asks him again, Peter, do you affectionately, truly love me? And Peter says, Lord, you know I love you. And they keep walking, just together, and it's almost like a time of forgiveness where his heart can be healed because of what happened. It was so terrible. And he asked him again, and this time Peter felt really bad that he had to ask him another time. He's like, Lord, you know I love you, of course I love you. And he would say, feed my lambs, feed my sheep. And so what Jesus is saying here is, Peter, I'm glad that you have a lot of words to say, because I also have a lot of words to say, but his words pack power because there's action behind them. And Peter's words petered out. His words, he said something that he didn't do. And so Jesus is showing Peter that his words do matter. And so for the amount of times, 1, 2, 3, that he said, I don't know the Lord, he gave Peter a chance to redeem those words and say, I do love you, Lord. I do love you, Lord. I do love you, Lord. And he said, okay, here's how you're going to show me that you love me. He said, I need you to feed my lambs. And when he's saying that, he's talking about the people, the innocent people that are in need of a shepherd. And even people that we might not think as being innocent and perfect, in Jesus's eyes, they are his lambs. because they need him. They are in need of a shepherd. We may not think they're perfect, but if they can receive Jesus as their Lord, to cover his blood to cover their sins, then they are his lambs, and they will be washed clean as white as snow. And he would say, feed my lambs. So he's letting Peter know, if you will show me that you love me through your actions, this is going to be a big way for you to show me you love me. Because he told him, they kept walking together down the beach, down the sand, and he said, Peter, he said, he was letting him know what it meant to love him. He said, when you were young, you got to do things, whatever you wanted to do, but if you're going to serve me, if you're going to truly follow me, there's going to be some things in your future that you're going to need courage for. You're going to need to say yes and actually follow through with your actions. And he told him what it was. Basically, he was going to die eventually at the end of his life. But it's better to live your life for Jesus, because people eventually, their life ends unless it comes to the point of the rapture. And he said, you're going to honor me by this. And are you willing, or will you take this offer? Are you going to show me you love me? So Peter had something to think about. Am I going to just say I love the Lord, or am I actually going to do something? And so he said, will you follow me, Peter? And so Peter said, yes, Lord, I will follow you. And that's something for all of us to think about. Will we follow the Lord? Not just when we say things to people. We're actually, if we have this covered, that's basically, people can hear our words, but if they don't see actions of us loving them in the name of Jesus, then our words are just basically nothing. So we need to find out what it is that Jesus wants us to do and actually put those to action. And that's all I have for today. We're going to talk about the ascension next week. And I love you guys so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.